Thank you for Patreon now for donating to the Patreon.
Hey guys, it's Vandiezo, back in our Card by Vanguard deck profile. So hope you guys enjoyed. Like, comment, subscribe, and let's start, shall we? Before we get started, let's remember these decks are built for fun. They're not meant to be competitive. If you have a more optimal build, then go for it. But I just prefer these like fun ones that I've made just to screw around. So let's go and get the start, shall we? And let's see what we got. So today we have Rorowa, set 11, all around. I'm very glad Rorowa's evolution kind of came, because for those of you that don't know, Rorowa was like my favorite one when Glitter was first introduced. Not because of his skill. When I eventually learned his skill, he was still my favorite, or like tied for favorite with Tamiyura. But I just really loved his art because I originally thought he held a bow in his hand, and when I eventually came to learn it was a sword, I was a little bit disappointed because bows are one of my favorite weapons. Then again, swords are also one of my favorite weapons. It depends on what sword it is. Also depends if it's dual wielded or not. But slowly but surely, I became accepting the sword over time and just really loved it. And now the new evolution of Rorowa, I not only love his art, but I love his skill a lot. So let's go ahead and get the start, shall we, and see what we got. First of today, we have our starter in Bioware Youth Rorowa. Grade 0 boost, 5k shield, 6k base, auto road point for second draw card, standard ability, and it's just a free draw. If you win second, you know, he's got that cool little grass dagger sword in his hand, and he is like calling towards the future. That's normally the stance someone does when they're going to the future. So all around Bioware Youth Rorowa is just a very solid starter. You do need him for the deck because the whole ride line relies on riding on top of one another. So one of Rorowa in the ride deck, technically speaking, if you want to change up the ride deck, you could, but I go for the full theme. Then we have our most important things before we get on to the triggers. Our 5 normal plant tokens. Grade 0 boost, 5k shield, no shield, or 5k power, no shield. The deck calls a lot of plant tokens. You're going to want the 5 plant tokens. I don't think you're ever going to get more than 5 plant tokens. What I mean by that is I don't think you're going to get to the point where you have a full board of plant tokens and then you're going to need more to call on top of them. But I mean, technically speaking, just retire them and then just call them in their place, but etc. So 5 plant tokens. Then we have our 1 Momoke token. Grade 0 boost, 5k power, 0 shield. Obviously, it represents a Momoke token and cannot be put into the deck. Act rear guard circle. Once per turn, retire 1 or more other rear guards of your, by the way. And this unit gets plus 5k power to end of turn for each unit retired for this cost. So, you know, if you retired a full board outside of himself, that's a total of plus 20, which is great. It can retire any rear guard, not just tokens. And then Glitter Rorowa, if your Vanguard is a Rorowa with Glitter, continues rear guard. If you have a unit with Redlina in its card name in the same column as the unit, this unit can attack from back row. All around pretty solid because that means this deck can get 4 attacks very easily, simply put by having a Rorowa and a Redlina on the board, and it's very easy to get both of them because the Vanguard is always going to be a Rorowa, and then the Redlina is actually searchable by 2 different cards, so that's nice. And as I mentioned, it can be revived by a card, so that's also nice as well. And again, being able to get a possible 20k if you board nuke is nice. Most of the time he's getting plus 15. There's been one game where I did it as a bit and I board nuked, and that board nuke actually made the difference by a 5 whole k. I remember it because it was something stupid. I don't remember why I did. I just remember it was stupid, and it was funny because if I didn't do that, I would have been 5k short of winning. So one of Momoke is just a very solid. You can only have one on the board at a time. I will show you that why later. So let's go and get started with the main deck actually. Starting off with the Overtrigger and Source Dragon Deity of Blessings Bless Favor. 1 copy, grade 0 boost, 50k shield, 5k power. Overtrigger, you may only have 1 Overtrigger in your deck. When revealed as a trigger, move that card, draw a card, choose one of your units, it gets plus 1 for the turn. And if you reveal it during draft check, activate a suggestion effect, which you can draw a card, choose one of your units, it gets a crit for the turn, all your opponent gets plus 10. And if your damage zone has the same number of cards your opponents or more, choose a card from your damage zone and heal it. All around, pretty solid. You get a crit, your opponent gets plus 10. Technically not for the turn, because if we look at the card, it doesn't say it. It is implied, but that doesn't mean you have to follow it. You can just plead ignorance. But all around pretty solid because you get a guaranteed draw in a million, whether you drive check this or damage check this. But then if you drive check it, you get an extra draw, so you get a total of 2 draws. Someone, probably the Vanguard or whatever, is going to hit with that 1 million, is going to get a crit. Your front row gets a 10k out of it, and then you possibly get a heal trigger along with that. All around, Blessed Favor is a very solid card and is basically an everything bagel. And I really love Blessed Favor to the point where it's basically my favorite Overtrigger because it quite literally does everything all at once. So one of Blessed Favor, just a very solid card. You could run the Cray Elemental overs if you wanted to, but outside of the Griffo Gila decks, I prefer to run like the Nation's Overtriggers in their own respective decks. So take that as you will. Then we move on to our normal triggers. First, we have 3 copies of Frenzied Harris, grade 0 boost, 15k shield, 4k power. Continues guard circle, give opponents Vanguards a grade 3 guards plus 5k shield. It's a 20k shield, it's a front trigger, it adds numbers to front row. I can't think of a reason to like say why you shouldn't run fronts or why you should run fronts. Like, from my experience, Frenzied Harris, this is one of the decks where she shows up when I need her. Basically, if I ask the deck to give me a front, it tends to just give me a front. So 3 of Frenzied Harris. Her guard power comes in handy, and when I want her to show up, she tends to show up. So that's all I can pretty much say. Then we have 4 copies of Serene Maiden Lena, grade 0 boost, 5k shield, 4k base, continuing Guard Circle, becomes Vanguard's a grade 3 Garrus with 5k shield. Okay, it's nice. It helps increase hand, it gets 10k shield. This deck doesn't technically need hand cards because it can make a board on a dime within 5 seconds, but if you want to, get the cards that make a board easier, or if you want to be able to consistently blow up your board with Momoke and then proceed to call it right back, I would suggest running at least 4 draws, because it's nice to have them in hand. You could also run extra crits just for pressure, but I do prefer like the rainbow. Here's the rainbow, by the way. 4 of Aspirating Maiden, Alana, grade 0 boost, 15k shield, 4k power. Critical trigger, already read at the end about this unit boosted, put this unit to solo, choose one of your units, it gets 2k for the turn. The thing that caused me an existential crisis, because with the way I played this deck, I end up in a soul problem at some point or another, and I always probably have to call this down, but my body refuses to do it because it involves me doing like a weird board play, and I don't like doing that play. So not because it's like hard, just because it just feels so weird looking at to where I don't want to do it. And you would think it would cost me the game, but it doesn't, because the deck gives me what I need to fix that problem. It just makes me look like an idiot in hindsight, or either that or it makes me look like I'm so smart that I predicted that I'd get out of this problem without having to use it. But all around, Alana's pretty nice because it gets soul, so if you really need it, you can use her to get soul, and she gives someone 2k, which like doesn't technically make a difference, and if technically it does if you have enough of her. So 4 of Alana, she's nice to have. She opens up rear guard, which isn't necessarily a good thing, but isn't a bad thing either. She gets 2k per doing it, and she gets up soul, so easy 4 of. And then we have 4 copies of Flowery Tone, grade 0 boost, 15k shield, 5k power. It's just a nice heal. It fits the theme of the deck more or less. Sadly, it's not a plant, but she's kind of like a fairy, and the deck is kind of fairy-esque at tech. So yeah, 4 Flowery Tone, just a very nice heal trigger. I don't really like the effect heals too much. I prefer the consistent 15k shield over the fluctuating 10 and 25. If you want to run the effect heals, go ahead, but I prefer the normal 4 of heal. Then move on to our grade 1s. First, we have 2 copies of To the Shining Stage, grade 1 normal order. Play this card by Soul Blasting 1 if you have Vanguard Rorowa in its card name. Here's a fun fact. I didn't remember this was actually in the deck until this morning, about an hour ago. It's Friday, June 9th at 8:50, by the way. So until about an hour ago, where I checked tabletop just to make sure what was in the deck. I completely forgot this was in there because I haven't seen it in forever, so I actually thought I removed it. But To the Shining Stage, by playing Soul Blast of 1 while you're on a Rorowa Vanguard, so it doesn't matter if it's the grade 1, the grade 2, or the grade 3, hell, even the grade 0, if you find a way to play it while you're at grade 0. You can choose up to 1 card with the grade less than or equal to your Vanguard from your drop zone, call it to rear guard circle. Then, if you have a rear guard with in its card name, you may call a plant token to rear guard circle. All around, pretty solid. So, it can get your rear guard, and then if you have a rear guard with Redlina in its card name, so you could call Redlina from that and it will still proc off the ability. You can choose to get a free plant token if you want to, so if you have a full board, you don't have to, and if you don't have a full board, well, obviously it's a free plant token. All around, pretty solid. It costs soul, so again, like, soul problems are kind of a thing, but at the same time, I have yet to draw into this in this version of the deck for whatever reason. I swear it wasn't in there, and it just appeared out of nowhere, but apparently it was in there for all the time, so I guess it's here to stay, I guess. But, again, being able to call rear guard, very nice, especially if it's a card you soul blast, worst case scenario, and also being able to get a plant token for Redlina and then Momoke token to nuke it is all around pretty solid as well. So 2 of Shining Stage. It's also a benefit if you choose to nuke Redlina with Momoke token skill for the board nuke, and then you play this to immediately get your board back. So take that as you will. Then we have 2 copies of Signpost Fairy. Okay, let's go ahead and get the bias out the way. We see the moon in the background. Grade 1 boost, 5k shield, 8k base. Auto 1 is retired from your rear guard circle by your card's ability. If your Vanguard is a glitter, choose one of your grade 1 less rear guards. It gets plus 10k for the turn. Yeah, I don't know why I struggled to use this in my previous version of the deck where I had this at a 4, or like a 3 of or a 4 of, I think. I don't know why it was so hard for me to find a way to use it, but for some reason in this deck where I have less copies of it, it's very easy for it to go off. I don't know why. Maybe I was just doing something stupid, but like being able to retire this off of Momoke's skill, who then gives Momoke plus an additional 10, so Momoke, who normally gets plus 15, is now getting plus 25, is just all around pretty solid. 4 of Signpost Fairy, like, does their job really well, gives a free 10k to a grade 1 less, and if it's not Momoke, you can give it to a plant token who is going to be a part of a not so big column, but you can make it a bigger column by a lot by giving it that free 10k. 2 Signpost Fairy, very solid grade 1. It's callable by any means because this doesn't specifically call Redlina, it just benefits from calling Redlina or having a Redlina on board, so by all means, worst case scenario, you can call this with To the Shining Stage. So 2 of Signpost Fairy, very solid grade 1, and I said fairly on accident. That wasn't meant to be a joke, that was genuinely an accident, but very solid grade 1, very good skill, so it just 2 of. Then we have 3 copies of Stepping Calyx Salvia. So grade 1 boost, 5k shield, AK base, auto and placed on rear guard circle. If you have a grade 3 grade Vanguard, you can call plant token rear guard. All around pretty solid, on a mandatory call, so you can choose to call if you don't want to. I would just suggest calling, and that's actually the reason why her and F3 have over Signpost Fairy, because in the situations, like any game situations where your hand is where both you and your opponent are barely surviving. I don't know why I can't talk now. When both you and your opponent are barely surviving, and now it's like survival of the fittest, and you have the bare minimum to call stuff, that's where Salvia comes in. She is a free plant token getter who makes a rear guard and herself to be fodder for Momoke's retire skill, therefore making Momoke bigger and probably benefiting the Redlina as well. That's why Salvia is actually at more copies than Signpost Fairy, because Signpost Fairy doesn't do anything unless they're retired, while Salvia over here actually does something by being placed. So I mean, you can choose not to run Salvia if you don't want to, because sometimes she's useful, sometimes she's not, and you can just choose to run more Signpost Fairy, but I do prefer to have Salvia at a 3-0 just because, again, free plant token, and in the worst case scenarios, she will at least get you 1 plant token and technically 2 cards for fodder of a Momoke, while Signpost Fairy will only do something if you have a Momoke, so take that as you will. Then we have 4 PGs in Planar Prevent Dragon, grade 1 boost, 0-6k base. Continuous Sentinel, you have to 4 cells in deck, and also put on guard circle. Choose one of your units, it cannot be hit on the battle. And if your hand is 2 or more cards, you carve from discarded, standard PG, no special edit. Basically, that means if this only one of the cards in your hand when you place it on guard circle, you don't have to discard one, so that's great, because that means you can be as aggressive as you want in the early game, and then when your opponent counterattacks you, you can just be like, not happening, no, and then proceed to just defend yourself with a PG while you only have 1 hand card, and be like, oh, okay, I'm safe, I don't have to worry about anything. Aron, very solid. You can run Custodial Dragon because they both have the exact same effect, but I prefer Planet Prevent Dragon because when Rorowa first came out, Planet Prevent was the only PG with the skill that came out. Again, doesn't really matter which one you want, but I just prefer to go off of that idealism alone. And again, that ability will be really useful because, especially the way I play this deck, you want to rush as early as possible. Again, the way I play, I rush as early as possible, so take that as you will. Then we have our last grade 1, it's the grade 1 of the ride deck, none in the main deck because it doesn't have a rearguard skill, and that was a 1 of Awakening from Slumber Rorowa. Grade 1 boost, 5k shield, 8k base. I just now realized why this always looked weird to me. This wasn't a part of the tree, it was a sword the entire time. I knew this looked weird, and when I finally looked at it over here for the first time, I realized that it's a sword. Anyway, also I just noticed this on his wrist, which is interesting. Anyways, auto when it's placed on by riding from Bioroid Youth Rorowa, aka the grade 0. Call up to 1 plant token to back row center rear guard. Plant tokens are grade 0 boost, 5k shield, 5k power, and 1 critical and half boost. And then glitter searches the fire regales. I'll go around pretty solid. Like the glitter still doesn't do anything, but it activates, I guess, other cards glitters. But also, you know, simply by riding from the specific starter, you get a free plant token to back center, so it's always going to be a 13k swing. So anyone that tries to be a smartass and just like 15k the Vanguard can, on the first Vanguard attack, can no longer 15k because that's still 1 to pass, which all around is pretty solid. And again, it's not a mandatory call, so if you don't want to call a plant token, don't. I would suggest doing it anyways because it's a free rear guard that you benefit from, but whatever. Either way, 1 of a row in the ride deck. Just a very solid skill, and there's not much more I can say about it. Then move on to our grade 2s. We run 4 copies of Affectionate Hunter, Mateus. This thing, I swear, looks like this came from like an actual like painting, because we have the fox, we have a deer, we have a huntsman with a gun. That's an old-timey gun. I swear I have seen a painting that looks exactly like this, and I'm going insane thinking about it. But ignoring that and trying to keep my sanity intact, he is a grade 2 with intercept, 5k shield, and 10k base. Auto, when he's placed on rearguard circle from the hand, if you have a grade 3 or greater Vanguard for Rorowa in its card name, Soul Blast 1 and retire 2 of your rear guards, your other rear guards. Choose a grade 2 or less from your drop zone and call it to rear guard. All around, pretty solid. He can fetch back triggers from drop zones, so stuff like Alana to go to Soul, he can fetch back 5Ks just because for boosting. He can fetch back a Redlina, so you can trigger Redlina's skill. He can fetch back on places, so you can trigger the on place skill, like such as Amble Salvia over here. All around, he's very solid, and he does all for simple Soul Blast when retiring to rear guards. Downside is, I mean, he can call himself, but the downside is, he has to be placed from hand for that skill, so he can't just call himself and then do it again. But then his other skills, auto from a rearguard circle at the beginning of your battle phase. If you have a unit with Rorowa in its card name and a unit with Redlina in its card name, you may call a card, a plant token to rearguard circle. The fun part about this is he just says you have a unit with both of them in their card names. So by a technical default, you don't have to have either on the Vanguard circle as long as they're both somewhere present on the board, mainly the rearguard circles. So you could basically be on Flagberg, and as long as you have a Rorowa rearguard and a Redlina rearguard, for whatever reason, you can then use his skill to get a free plant token. I'm not saying you should do that, I'm just saying you can. But all around pretty solid, gets a free plant token that you don't necessarily have to get if you don't want to, but it's just all around pretty nice. He's a really good grade 2, he doesn't get the ability to board spam with a bunch of plant tokens, which is fair because he's restricted to front rearguard circle, but all around, still good. He gets rearguards, he can recycle rearguards, and he just gets tokens. What's more to say about him? 4 of. Then we have 4 copies of the star of the deck, arguably, Drag Gritter Girl of Flame Blossoms Redlina. Grade 2, and it's a 5k shield, 10k base. Is it just me, or is this supposed to be Momoke token, except different? Because that does not look like Momoke token. Like, look at that, and then come look at this. Those are 2. Actually, I kind of see it, but at the same time, it looks like they're definitely different because it doesn't look nearly as red as this one. Maybe that's what he looks like when he retires 5 rear guards or 4 rear guards. I don't know. Anyways, act rear guard circle. If you do not have a Momoke token on the board, counterboss 1 and call it to 1 Momoke token to rear guard. Okay, and that's why 1 Momoke can only exist at a time, because she is the main Momoke maker, and only 1 can exist when she's on the board. So all around pretty solid, though. It's just a simple counterboss to call 1 Momoke token, and I think she's the only card in the deck that counterblast, or if she's not, she's one of the only cards that counterblast, so most of it goes to her. And then Glitter Rorowa if your Vanguard is a Rorowa, so it doesn't matter if it's the grade 2 or the grade 3, it will still proc off. Auto rear guard, when this unit attacks, Soul Blast 1, choose one of your token units in the same column as her, and this unit gets the power of that unit to end a battle. It includes increased values. So technically speaking, it doesn't gain Momoke guaranteed if you just have a normal unit behind her. She does just get that normal unit and basically doubles the boost. Or you just be smart and you call Momoke behind her. Momoke goes in for a swing, and then after Momoke's swing, you go in with Redlina and then use up your soul, which is why you get into a soul problem in the first place, and then take Momoke's possible 20, somewhere between 20 and 30 power, and then just shove it on her. That's why if you ever see a trigger in your drive check, unless you're giving it to the other column, always give it to Momoke, because Momoke is just going to make itself bigger, and then it will make Redlina bigger by default. So all around, Redlina's a solid grade 2. Yes, she's the reason why I end up having a soul problem half the time, but all around, she's pretty solid. She gets Momoke for a simple cost of counterboss 1, and she gets a lot of numbers out of a simple soul boss, so 4 up. I think the biggest number I've hit off first grade 3 turn with her, granted it involved triggers, but I think it was somewhere in the 60s, which won me a game because my opponent literally didn't have a PG and I just overwhelmed them with a lot of attacks. That's why I keep saying, rushing the early game, the PGs will come help you. 4 Redlina though. Then we have our last grade 2, it's the grade 2 of the ride deck, 1 in the ride deck, none in the main deck of the World 3000 Years Later, Rorowa. Grade 2 NS at 5k shield, 10k base, auto when placed on Vanguard Circle, retire 1 of your rear guards and call up to 2 plant tokens, 2 rear guard circles. Place plant tokens are grade 0 boost, 5k shield, 1 critical and have boost. So, you know, this is kind of why I recommend you use this skill to call a plant token. Again, you don't have to, but like, now you don't have to commit a hand card for Roro's skill to call 2 plant tokens. Also, you can just call it and another rear guard, because again, I do recommend rushing, just to be like, if your opponent kills your rear guard next turn, at least you can use this one skill to kill the other rear guard you place to get 2 plant tokens. All around pretty solid. Typically how I do that is I kill the back row center one that I made and I just call 2 plant tokens to one column, and then I call Redlina to another column, then I use Redlina's skill to get him a Momoke, and then I just call typically Signpost Fairy or Salvia behind the back center, so now I have a full board. That's what I mean by rushing, basically. So you're really only committing 2 hand cards to board, technically 3 if we count the ride deck one, but all around pretty solid skill nonetheless. He opens up the board just to rushing, so there's not much more I can say about him. 1 of in the ride deck of Rorowa, none in the main deck, because again, doesn't have a rear guard skill, but pretty solid. Then move on to our grade 3s. First, we run 3 copies of the order that I swear was out of 4 of, but apparently it's not. You see, that's the thing. I thought this was out of 4 of, and it wasn't. And then I thought this just wasn't in the deck anymore, and it was, apparently. But I guess I'm just wrong about everything in this deck. Either way, 3 copies of Resolute Pair of Eyes. So grade 3 set order after Star Wars play, put it to Order Zone. One of my favorite orders in terms of art. In terms of names, I liked its Japanese, or its original name better, but whatever. Play it by counterbossing 1, retiring any rear guard, whether it's a token or an actual unit, if you have a Vanguard Hero in its card name. So you can technically play this on grade 2 or grade 1 or grade 0, even if you find a way to do that, but most of the time you're probably just going to play it on grade 3. Auto, when it's put into your order zone, search your deck for up to 1 card with Redlina in its card name, reveal it, put it to hand, shuffle your deck. So this thing either searches the grade 3, which is very valuable for attacking with, or it just searches the grade 2, which again is also very valuable for setup, and it does it for free simply by being placed, and you don't even have to add one if you don't want to. Hell, you can just search and shuffle, because that's what I do half the time, and the continuous order zone during your turn, the main reason why I like this card, if your Vanguard with Row in its card name, all your back row token units get plus 5k power. Very good, because not only does Momoke get power from retiring the rear guards now, but he also gets power from the order. So Momoke is a guaranteed 10k base with 1. Typically I have 2 or 3 by the end game, so he's somewhere off of base power alone, somewhere consistently between 10 and 20. All on just without any other skills. All around, Resolute Pair of Eyes is a very solid card, and then also boosts up the plant tokens too, so that's nice too for the early game, because normally they're really weak without triggers. So all around, very good order. It ups the numbers of your plant tokens that manage to stay on the board, so you can keep your hand cards for Guardian power. It ups the power of the Momoke, which in exchange ups the power of Lena and gives you a lot of numbers to work with. And not to mention, it's a freebie search, and the only downside to this is it's a cost of a counterboss one, which technically takes away from Lena's counterboss. All around, very good order. I like its skill a lot. I thought it was a 4, but apparently it's a 3 of, but 3 of seems to be working a lot, so I'm going to stick with the 3 of on that one. Then we have 2 copies of Unwavering Flame Sword Redlina. Yeah, I stick with her at 2 because, again, this is searchable by any means, so take that as you will. Grade 3 to 9% 13k base. Also, I don't like her very much. Auto rearguard at the beginning of your main phase. If you didn't have a Momoke token on your rearguard, so called to Momoke token to rearguard. So she's the same thing as her, except she does it for free, which is great, but at the same time, it's specifically at the beginning of main phase. So if you miss the timing, then screw you, because also up to 1, so it's not a mandatory call either. So Glitter Rorowa, if you have a Vanguard Rorowa in its card name that has Glitter. Auto hand. At the end of the battle, your rearguard with Redlina and its card name attacked. If your opponent's Vanguard's a grade 3 or greater, retire rearguard with Redlina and its card name and Momoke token. Call this card to rearguard circle and increase that unit's power by the power of the retire Momoke token. Retire for the cost of the ability instead. Basically, say that Momoke token you swung with had a power of, I don't know, 40. Then when you would call this Redlina, she gets the 40. So she's at like what, 53, and then she'll possibly get Persona Ride buff, so 63. Like, she is good. Don't get me wrong, and she does it for free, so she can allow for 5 attacks, which is nice. I just don't like using her for some reason. I don't know why, mainly because like she nukes up my board. Like, she requires me to lose a Redlina, and outside of the turn you play her, this Redlina will always have more numbers than this one, and even then they're probably gonna have the same number too. The only difference would be 3k. So I would rather have this Redlina on board than this one, which is why I don't like using her very much. But in games where I'm just trying to go all in for the aggressor to win, like that match against my friends, then I will use her. And again, she is searchable by this, but I won't search her unless all of these are out of deck, which tends to be by the second one, so that's fair enough. Either way, 2 of Unwavering Flame Sword Redlina. She's still a solid card. She allows for free multi-attack, which is nice, and she does get big numbers. Again, I say, though, I do prefer this one because it will always have bigger numbers outside of that one turn, so take that as you will. 2 of. Then we have 4 copies of my boy, the man, the Chad, the myth, the legend, my possibly favorite now of all grade 3s of D, except for Nirvana and Ezel, obviously, and that is a Verdescent Flash Rorowa. Okay, first up, that name, hell yeah. For all of you that know, V is for some reason one of my favorite letters. I don't know why that's the case. It just is. And so any word with V in it, I kind of have bias towards. And yeah, there's my bias towards that. He has a sword. Okay, we got more bias. And just his stance. Mwah, magnifico. French kiss. Mwah, it looks beautiful. I would go Italian if I could. I could go French if I could. Either way, all around, pretty solid art on that one alone. Anyway, skills, grade 3 turn persona 13k base. Auto when he's placed by riding from one precious thing Rorowa. Call up to 2 plant tokens to rearguard circle. So free 2 plant tokens just by simply riding it, and then they get auto when they're retired from your rearguard circle. Draw a card until the end of the opponent's next turn, and then activate Persona Ride. So not only do you get the free 10k to draw from Persona Ride by riding from the OG, but you also get 2 free plant tokens who either this turn when they retire from Momoke I'm just going to keep doing this because it's easier to do it this way. If you retire from the Momoke token, you get a draw, so technically 2 possible draws that turn, or you just keep them alive, and then when your opponent kills them by either battle or nuking them, as long as they are retired, you get to draw a card. So all around, pretty solid skill on there alone. It refills the cost that you're making for losing your units on your cards. But then also its other effect, Auto Vanguard, when this unit attacks into anything, bind it for one precious thing Rorowa from your soul. Choose any one of your glitter rear guards, so it could be one of the 2 Redlinas, or it could be your Momoke token, or, sorry, not Momoke, that Momoke token, or it can be anything else. Technically, it could be that if you, actually, it doesn't have glitter, but you get what I mean, because you can call from soul with the order, or technically call from soul with the order. You can choose one of your glitter rear guards. Until end of turn, that and this unit both get plus 5k power, and then this unit gets a crit on top of that, and at the end of the battle, ride the bound card for the cost. All around, pretty solid. He's a guaranteed, well, the turn you ride him, he's probably a 28k at the very least, double critical without boosters to face, while you have a Momoke token and a Redlina that are probably somewhere in the total, somewhere in the 60s each. So, all around, Rorowa, pretty solid. This is a good upgrade. It gets free pluses off of your rear guards being retiring, so you can replace them. It gives the Persona Ride simply by riding from the OG. He gets an easy upgrade in terms of power for both himself and the rear guard, and he gets crit pressure guaranteed. What's not to like about him? Easy 4 of. I can think of no arguments against this. Also, his pants make him look like he's Peter Pan. Then we have our last card in the deck, one of in the ride deck, one of in the main deck, just in case you can't see over Destined Flats, which is not going to happen probably. And that is the man, the boy, the myth, the legend, the thing that made me think was a bow was this. And that is for one's precious thing, Rorowa. Grade 3, Tundra, Persona Ride, 13k base, act Vanguard Circle once per turn by Soul Blasting 1, call up to 3 plant tokens to rear guard. All around very solid. Simply put, Soul Blast 1 card and get half a board, which is nice. And that's pretty much the cards I would use to nuke from a Moke, so free 15. And then Auto Vanguard, when this unit would attack, or when this unit is is attacked. I used to read it when it was attacked or attacked. Retire one or more of your tokens, and this unit gets plus 5k power to on the battle for each unit retire for this cost. All around, pretty solid, because at most you probably have, unless you are in like that one situation where your whole board turned into tokens because maybe your Red Lena just died and you somehow have 5 rear guards that are tokens, you have about a free total of somewhere between 15 to 20k shield, which all around is nice. Sometimes you have to sacrifice a Moke token for the greater good, and sometimes you don't, but being able to have a 20k shield down for free if you really need it is great. It's not a once per turn ability, so you can spread that shield out however you feel like it. All around, for once per thing, Rorowa is a very solid grade 3. He has the defensive option, not an amazing defensive option, but a defensive option nonetheless. He has the ability just to basically make Momoke get a free 15 for a simple cost of a Soul Blast, and obviously his evolution is amazing as well. So one of in the ride deck, and then one of in the main deck, just in case you can't draw into a Verdescent Flash, but either way, very solid grade 3. And that's it for the deck. I hope you guys enjoyed it. All around, I love playing this deck. It's one of my favorite aesthetically because we have all these guys with swords and what I presumed were arrows originally. We have all these cool arts. We have the skills that focus on pumping up the grade 0s with such amazing numbers and benefiting from everything. We have one of my favorite orders, and we have such an amazing support card who can just call back the other deck's main card. Like, all around, this deck is so fun to play. You get rear guards, you can nuke rear guards, give something numbers, and then recall those rear guards and get benefits out of it. And again, we have one of my favorite evolutions of all time. And I'm just going to end it there before I get on a tangent. I hope you guys enjoyed. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, join us, follow Twitch, and I'll see you all in the next one. Don't forget to set up your Vanguards.